series called New Ways for Better Days. And I think there's a saying that says something like, you can't keep on doing the same thing and expect different results. And so, as I was thinking about new ways for better days, I realized that there was a lady who had been sick for many years, and I was going to try to put the scripture up, but I don't think it's working on my end to share my screen. Does anybody see the screen coming up? Okay, I'm not going to worry about it. So there was a lady who had been bleeding for many years. She had been bleeding for 12 years. And because she had been bleeding, she was unclean. Because she was unclean, she couldn't have any type of contact with her family. She couldn't have any contact with regular people. She was really in a place where she was frustrated. I don't know if you can imagine. I did the math. 12 years is about 4,380 days. So you're talking about wanting some better days. She had been wanting better days for a very long time, and she had gone to a lot of doctors, and the doctors couldn't help her out. The scripture says that she had spent all of her money, and the doctors still couldn't find what the solution was. I'm going to read from Mark chapter 5. Mark chapter 5 says, and a woman who was there had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. Now, I don't know if you know what it feels like, but all of us have these wounds that have come from other places. Let me give you an example. When I was when I was growing up, I was a white kid in a black neighborhood, and I didn't really know where I fit. My parents were white, well, still are white. My family's white. I'm in a black neighborhood. I don't fit with my family exactly because I wasn't exactly them. I didn't fit with the people in the neighborhood. Then I went to a private school. I didn't fit there. For a long time, I struggled understanding, where do I fit? I was trying to figure out what my identity was. And I didn't realize until years later that some of the relationships that I got into as an adult were because I was looking for acceptance. I was looking for affirmation. I was looking for what I felt like I didn't have as a child. This woman who was sick for 12 years probably felt like she didn't know where she belonged. She probably felt isolated. She probably felt lonely. She probably had a broken heart. If she had a family, she couldn't even be around her family. How does that feel to be a mom, but you can't be around your family? If you understand what I'm saying about these kind of internal wounds that we experience, can you put something in the chat about something you may have felt in the past? Have you ever felt lonely? Have you ever been depressed? Have you ever been discouraged? Have you ever felt like somebody abandoned you? You ever had someone pass away and you weren't ready? Are we ever ready? But you felt like they abandoned you because you weren't ready for them to go. Have you ever felt hurt from a family member? Hurt from a family member. That's at a whole different level. Have you ever been in a church that you thought was a safe space, just to turn around and someone in that safe space made that space not safe for you anymore? And somebody said all of the above in the chat. Those are those wounds that if we do not find healing for them, they begin to fester and they begin to show up in other ways. Let me give you an example. I have this bad habit of pulling on my fingernails. And so you can end up with a hangnail. And years ago, I had an infected finger, and it was infected for months. And it would swell up. And I'm not trying to be disgusting, but there was pus coming out of it. There was blood that would come out of it. If you just touched it just a little bit, it would hurt. And I finally went to the doctor, and the doctor told me, "Oh, you need an antibiotic." All this time, I was covering it up with a bandage. I was putting peroxide on it. I was trying to cut the nail out, and the doctor said, "No, the infection is internal. You need an antibiotic." And once you take the antibiotic and that kills the infection, then once you deal with the internal problem, then the external problem will be healed itself. I hope you understand what I'm saying. A lot of times we have not dealt with our internal wounds. And because our internal wounds have not been dealt with, externally we are fussing at people. We're grouchy. We have a bad attitude. We go off. Somebody just says one little thing and we go off. And we're not really upset at them. We're upset at someone else, but we're taking it out on them. Somebody tell me in the chat that you understand what I'm saying. What this lady who was sick for 12 years had to understand was she had to realize that the doctors weren't working for her. Her old ways weren't working. And she had to realize that there had to be some new ways if she was going to find healing. Her first thing was she had to realize it. Sometimes we don't want to admit that what we're doing is because we haven't dealt with some things. We haven't dealt with things, and that's why we're still experiencing pain. We have to realize that the old way, whatever we were doing, whatever toxic relationship we ended up in because we were trying to numb the pain, is not working. And we have to do something different. And so this woman decided to do something different. Once she realized that the old ways weren't working, she she decided to reach out to Jesus. It says in Matthew chapter 5, when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and she touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. She had to realize that she intentionally had to make a choice to reach out. We're not going to find our healing if we don't decide to do something. We have to decide to reach out. And it continues on and it says that Jesus realized that somebody had touched him. And
Camille, are you
it
on the
says
line?
Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Here's the new ways. Here's what she did that was different from the past. First of all, she touched Jesus. Up to that time, she had never touched Jesus. She may not have even heard about Jesus, but once she heard about Jesus, she touched him. The second thing that she did was she told the truth. When Jesus confronted her, she told her truth. The third thing that she did was she trusted Jesus because Jesus said that your faith has healed you. Three things she did: she touched him, she told the truth, and she trusted Jesus. Here's why I think these are new ways for us to be healed. First of all, how many of us have actually touched Jesus for ourselves? A lot of us hang around faith based people. A lot of us dabble and dibble in, you know, inspirational things, or we might put some gospel music on to relax us. But how many of us have actually experienced Jesus for ourselves? I'm not talking about church, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about we actually have reached out and experienced him for ourselves. When she touched Jesus, that's when she experienced his power. When you touch Jesus, you will experience it and you will know that it was him. You will know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was his power. Not only did she touch Jesus, but she told the truth. Because once you get in the presence of Jesus and you experience him, you can't hide the lies anymore. The lies are exposed. Sometimes the lies are that I had something to do with the pain. Sometimes I have to tell the truth and say, oh, this was my fault and I did something and I need to tell the truth about it. Sometimes our truth is for us to let go of the guilt and the shame because it was nothing that I did. Sometimes we carry guilt for things that people have done to us, and we feel like it was our fault. And our truth has to be that wasn't my fault. I'm not taking the blame. I'm not apologizing for something that was not my fault. I see you nodding your head, Kaylin. I hope somebody else understands what I'm saying. So, not only do we need to touch Jesus, do we need to tell the truth, but we have to learn to trust that when God says he can do anything, that he can do anything. I feel like so many times we have trusted people who represented God to us. And when they let us down, then we feel like God let us down. Did that make sense? Let me say that again. Sometimes I feel like we have trusted people who represent God to us, but when they let us down, we feel like God let us down. God is not the one that let us down. As we reach out and touch Him and experience Him, as we tell the truth, as we share our truth, then we're able to build that trust back up. This lady, once she touched Jesus, she was immediately healed. So that would be the last part of her story. Not only did she realize that she needed healing, not only did she reach out for herself, but as soon as she did that, her recovery started. Her recovery started immediately. And the thing that she probably didn't know at first was that there was an instantaneous healing, but there was a process of recovery as well. This woman had lived isolated for 12 years. Part of her process of recovery was she had to go and be declared clean because she had been unclean for 12 years. She had to go to the priest and show herself, and they had to declare that she was clean. So there's not only an immediate healing, but there is a recovery process that we go through. It's interesting to me that the song that was played this morning, Israel sang, he said, he was speaking as if he was God's voice saying, I specialize in wounded things. That's what God does. He specializes in the things that are wounded. You think about it. Who is the one that created us? If he is the one that created us, who is the best one to take the broken heart, to take the broken things and put them back together? It has to be the one who put us together in the first place. She realized that she needed to be healed. She reached out for herself. She didn't reach out for anybody else. She didn't ask anybody else to go and reach out. And that started her process of recovery. There's a verse in James chapter 5, verse 6, verse 16, I believe, says, confess your faults to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. I think that verse is important to us because that's our prescription for recovery. Confess your faults to one another. You know what that is? That's therapy. And pray for one another. That's our faith. I saw a shirt the other day that said God in therapy. That's what James chapter 5, verse 16 says. Confess your faults to one another and pray for one another. How are we going to start this healing process? Some of us need to be honest. Start journaling what we feel. Some of us need to journal and be completely honest and say, I don't even know how I feel. I don't even know what to write, but let me start to write it down. And then some of us need to figure out, is this for someone? Do I need to share it? Do I need to share it with someone professional? Do I need to share it with the person who hurt me? That's part of our recovery process. You know how I know? We only know when we've been through it. That's the only way that we know. God has healing for us.